Today, our guest is Damian Martone.
Damian is an experienced designer and a household name in the Berlin design scene. He is also the founder of Berlin Product Design Meetup and the very well-received Berlin Hatch Design Conference, which will go into its third edition come September 2024.
In this episode, we're talking about meetups, conferences, and how to organize design events. I am Nick Lakev.
I'm Ningfei O, and this is Design Unframed,
the podcast that believes that every pixel has a story. Hi Damian, thank you so much for joining us today. Ning and I know you from Hatch Conference, a design conference in Berlin, but you also have a lot of experience as a designer and in the design industry. How did you come to work as a designer, and how did your journey look like?
I studied graphic design when I started. I was starting university, and it was kind of clear to me that I wanted to do something in that direction. But I guess, as most people, when they start studying something, they don't really know what it's going to be like. Luckily for me, it was not what I expected, but it was something that I really liked. I'm originally from Buenos Aires, Argentina. That's where I studied graphic design. And, it's a very traditional kind of school following the rules of like Bauhaus and Ulm as well. So it's pretty much very, very actively practical. And while you do have a lot of theory, then most of the stuff happens like in a kind of workshop environment with your teachers and your teammates. So I studied graphic design, and that's how I wanted to continue doing design, but I was always a bit on the geeky side and was always, meddling with like programming and like tech stuff. It was kind of the beginning of like the fast internet connections, I would say. So it was really fun, and I was always the kind of person who was more into the websites and that kind of stuff, and all my other mates were illustrators and like artists, and like they were into like printing and all that kind of stuff, which I also loved, but I always went into like web stuff. And I started working as a graphic designer, but at one point I was making more money working on the side doing websites than they could pay me in a graphic design studio. So I continued to that path until the point where someone was like, "Hey, there's this new thing, the iPhone. Can you do like apps?" And I'm like, "Sure." And that's how I became a UX designer. Yeah. That's the story. When there was no one else to do it, you had the time to learn it.
It was a crazy time. I remember I came to design from the opposite part, because I was studying engineering at the university, and I started digging into design, graphic design. It was iPhone, and everyone started asking for apps, and there were no guides, nothing. Just do whatever you want. And we started doing it in Photoshop. It was crazy. Photoshop for designing apps.
Yeah, we've come a long way.
Yeah, for sure. It was a different time for sure. That I was just learning by doing, and at a certain point, at a certain point it became like what was most requested, right? And after having a bit of experience of like at the beginning was like, okay, what is this thing? You need to export in like 2 sizes. Like, how do you do that? And obviously the screens were very different, and the requirements were very different also in performance and stuff. And then fast forward to a few years, and not so many years after, I came to Berlin, Germany to do a German course of 3 months, and almost 10 years later, still I'm there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Damian, Hatch Conference is only in its 2nd edition, and I remember I really enjoyed attending the event in October. It was refreshing because it felt to me like it was a conference that was organized by designers and for designers. And, the flow of events felt really natural, but intentional at the same time. And it felt like the people there were genuinely, learning from one another. So it was a great vibe, and I really enjoyed it. Can you tell us a bit about what inspired you and how you got started with Hatch?
So I think it all started at the beginning, like mid 2021, when the pandemic had slowed down a little bit and it was kind of like safe to meet again. And a friend and I were just thinking like, hey, we really miss this design meetups that were happening in Berlin all the time. And we said, let's just talk to the people who organized those big, meetups that were back then, and let's offer our time to help them out, to help them come back. And we were talking to like, all the big ones, and they were all like, we're not sure yet, or, some people have left Berlin already. So much has changed. And we were like, okay, if no one wants to start a meetup, then let's do it. So we started our own, and obviously it was really really tough at the moment because we had still a lot of restrictions. We had to do like masks and tests and all this kind of stuff. It was impossible to find an office. It took us a very long time. Luckily, the people from Red Sofa in Berlin had this store that was like ground floor office, so they can open everything, and it was quite a nice spot. And we started these meetups that started growing really well, and they're still actually running. This friend's not involved anymore, but I have a team of other few people helping out, and they're now in like the 24th edition. But back in the third, someone came to me from Nick he was working at Berlin Partner, one of the organisms that helps sort of tech and innovation in Berlin, and he said, "Hey, have you thought of doing this in a kind of a larger scale? Because there's definitely some funding for it. There's definitely, the interest, and there's nothing like this in Berlin." And I couldn't quite believe it because I was thinking like, but Berlin's such a design hub. How can it be that there is no UX conference? And like I researched, and effectively there was nothing. So I started sort of the planning of what's going to be 3 years into this becoming what I wanted it to become. And that's sort of how when everything started.
Wow. So this has been 3 years in the making.
Cool.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, we started end of 2021, and I consider that next year will be the edition where everything is kind of fitting as I wanted on the original one. But obviously, year 1 and 2 had to adapt to the possibilities and starting something new.
So you had to cut a lot of stuff off to launch the first edition.
I mean, there were multiple things to start. To rent out a venue, you need to rent it many months in advance. So we had to rent a venue in January 2022 while there was still a big lockdown in Germany. Wow. Like people were not allowed out of their house, out of to get together or anything like that. And we were betting that we would be able to do that. So 2 things happened because of that. The first thing was we only could cap it to around 150 people because that was what we knew that the government would allow to have as an event, even if we did a test by then or something like that. And the second thing, which actually became a trade of the conference, was because we only could have 150 people, we thought, how can we make it, especially for sponsors, how can we make this relevant, right? To be like, okay, it's not just 150 random people, that's too small, it can be like a random meeting. So we decided, hey, why don't we do this for seniors and above in a way to be like, as it's more specific, it's different to have 150 people in a room than 150 designers, which are seniors, which are in this type of part of their career, etc. And that sort of became what is Hatch today in terms of that requirement.
Yeah, it's like Hatch is a really great conference. It's not a wonder that you spend so much time organizing it. I remember when I spoke on a stage for the first time as a designer, I was talking about components and how to set them up in Figma. It was Sketch in Sketch, such a prehistoric times as well. And I remember being really excited and at the same time super, super scared. I thought I would mess things up, but thank God it went well. I got a lot of good feedback from colleagues and from the audience, and it gave a boost to my career and also on a personal level. But I cannot imagine how it feels to organize a conference. And can you remember how it felt the moment when you were on stage at the first edition of Hatch with a crowd before you?
It was funny because I did the first presentation, welcoming everyone. And then I got down the stage and my teammates were like, oh, you were so confident and so relaxed and whatever. And my thought was it was so hard to get to this point that there's nothing that can happen on stage that will make me feel bad at all. If I make a mistake or whatever, that means nothing. This was like blood, sweat, and tears. So it was actually not at all. It was quite. I think the day where we were building up was a little kind of emotional, but then actually being there, it was just like, okay, it's happened now. It is what it is. We had terrible rain that day, and we had a stage that was outdoors. So I was worried about other stuff, right? I was not really in the moment. And to be honest, I have very few memories of that moment just because my head was somewhere else.
Do you remember maybe how it impacted you personally, maybe in your career as well?
For sure. I mean, this is what one of the greatest things of organizing something like this, and why I always encourage designers to have side projects or start businesses, is because it just gives you the excuse to just expand your network like exponentially. And the crazy thing is, like, with the excuse of me organizing this little event, I could have conversations with designers and people that I never would have reached out or would have thought that I could, that they could be interested in talking to me. This just really made me gain access to a lot of people and a lot of companies that before was not possible. And this is where there's a part that's not measurable about kind of the success, because you can be like, okay, are you profitable, how much, and what are your plans, or how much can you expand, or that kind of stuff. Sure, you can measure, but like the network capital is really like an uncountable thing.
Yeah, I understand how that is. I mean, you talk to any designer, you ask them, hey, like, do you know Damian? They're like, yeah, Damian Martone. Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah, I know him. So you're like a household name in Berlin right now, in most designers, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Some people do certain stuff for different reasons. Me personally, I'm not the kind of person who likes to be in the spotlight. I'm always more like, I like to shed the spotlight, but I sometimes feel like if I'm not the one who's like building a platform or pushing for certain stuff, no one wants to do it. So it's exactly the same as the meetups, right? I was like, it would have been much more comfortable to be in a team of people who were already doing this and just go with them. But if no one wants to do it, okay, I'll just carry it on my shoulder and just do it. But I don't want to be like, okay, like you talk and well, I'm in a podcast right now, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. I'm curious then, how did you find a group of people to work with? Surely you couldn't have gone at it all on your own. I'm sure there's like a good organizing team and there's people behind you. How did you find those people, and what drove them rather, to join you in this venture?
Yeah, it was great. It was a great coincidence. Or I started everything by myself, obviously with the help of Nick, who was at Berlin Partner at the moment, just like helping me out with just some possibilities and looking for some sponsorship. And obviously the amount of people that have helped make this happen is like infinite. But I started everything on my own, and just I remember it kind of started also. I put a tweet out and I just had like a graphic, and I had like the ring, which I had already kind of designed. And I think I wrote like, I'm starting a design conference. And then from there on, like lots of people started like commenting, and some good things, some not so good things. But
so your graphic design skills came into play, because
absolutely. I mean, the reason why this happened is because I'm good at faking things, right? Like I can put a nice landing page and people are like, okay, that looks legit, I'm gonna buy a ticket, because there was nothing, right? When people, but it's true, and this is the superpower of designers, right? Like I can make you believe that I mean, sometimes people are like, how many people are you? And I'm like, well, it's me, and then there's this guy who helps, a little part-time, and then there's this girl who like helps out and comes to the MC, but that's it. Like we're just 3 people, and it's mostly like, yeah. But I found basically from this Twitter exchange, one guy who's Alex Sturman, he wrote me, and he's like, he's from Wales, was living in Berlin for a short time, and he was like, hey, anything that you want, maybe I can help you out. I haven't organized events, but I can be of help if you need. And I met him, and I was like, that's fantastic. Like, how would you think about like taking care of the online conference? Because I don't have capacity for that. And he's like, I have no idea how to do it. And I'm like, me neither. Let's do it together. And this is kind of like, it was really great because we're very different and really complementary in a lot of stuff. And I think he was very scared, but he did a great job, and this year even better. So it was really great. And with Clemens, who's like the MC of the conference, I had seen her through my network that she was doing some webinars on freelancing and stuff. And she also wrote me at the saying like, hey, do you need any help? Or, like, can I don't know if she wanted to speak or do something there. And I was like, well, if you actually mean it, I would like someone to actually be the MC of the conference, because with all my work, I cannot really be on stage and presenting and stuff. She was really surprised that I asked her this, but she said yes. And, now she's, I mean, you've seen her live. She's amazing. And it really, really was great that it could happen.
That's wonderful. I mean, sometimes we're surprised at the random kindness, that comes our way when we're designing such things or when we're organizing such events. Or just in life in general.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure it wasn't an easy feat, by any standard. And from my experience, I've been to a few conferences. Some of them can seem, a little stale or sometimes overpriced. And sometimes people just attend to grab free coffee or swag, that kind of thing. So in your experience, how did you think of the things that made Hatch so engaging or inclusive for the design community?
I had also attended before some conferences, and my main thought was the following. If there's two things. First of all, if you're gonna make someone spend like 13 hours in a place, it better be a cool place, and you better want to stay there. And what you need for someone to actually want to not leave is first to be comfortable, right? That involves like being able to sit in a nice place, have some nice food, nice drinks, like be, nice temperature, all that kind of stuff that otherwise you're like, okay, let's go out. The second thing would obviously be to have, an engaging reason to be there. Obviously, like speakers, content, all that stuff that's so important. And the third one is like that your peers are also there and that you feel like if you're leaving, you're missing out, right? So those are the three things that I put the main focus on. And they're all kind of just as important as the other ones. So this is the key elements of how Hatch came to be. And we already said, okay, there's this thing that happens a lot in conferences, especially in the big ones, where you're like, hey, actually, like it's too random, right? The people that you meet over there, it's really hard to like find your crew, or sometimes it's like, yeah, nice that you do this and this and that is interesting, but I'm actually here to like network with my own or find a new job or something like that. So what we wanted to do is like make it super specific. And what happened in the first one is like there was only 150 people, but no matter where you turn around, everyone was a senior designer or lead designer or something like that. So there was like this really magical thing that happened over there, and that we wanted to like even make it further for next year.
Absolutely. I felt that 100% at Hatch. You turn a corner and someone's a designer at this amazing company. So there was a sense of really strong camaraderie and fraternity, and people, were just very candid with one another because we all shared the same experiences to an extent, right? And the location is super cool. For those of you who don't know, it's at Silent Green in Berlin, which is a repurposed crematorium, right? It turns something dead into something so alive, and when you go underground, it's kind of like a Matrix Zion kind of space,
Yes.
And it's super cool. Very, very beautiful space. So props to that.
It's actually cool also because you organize a conference for senior people. You can talk about things that only people on the middle level and above understand. You shouldn't explain some really basic stuff as on some general conferences. You can just start talking about something on the higher level or like on a deeper level. It makes the event more engaging and focused.
We were very conscious that after COVID as well, there was already so much information online that why would you attend the conference, right? You can see like any big design speaker already for free on YouTube or something like that. So we understood that the purpose of the conference, while the content was what drags you in, it's not fully to like sit down for 8 hours or 10 hours and just listen to talk after talk after talk. As also we did it like, okay, the first thing we say when we get on stage is like, you're going to miss on top because there's going to be like stuff going on and you're going to have to like switch stages. And it's it tends to be a little more like a festival in the way of like, you're not meant to like sit down in a theater, watch 8 great talks and take a lunch break or whatever, and then continue. It's really about you exploring and you, pre-signing up for certain stuff. And we had different things to do. And this makes the day, go by super fast.
Damian, do you remember any funny anecdotes, interesting stories, or personalities that you've come across while planning for Hatch?
Yeah, for sure. Well, the rain thing was I think one of the experiences that sort of like marked me the most, because we had this first year, this venue that was like beautiful for the, we had beginning of the summer, the end of the summer venue. We had this giant outdoor part. We had Figma sponsor. They had like a terrace outside. We had an outdoor stage with like the smaller stage. And days before, I started seeing that there was this like forecast of like insane rain, and it kept changing and stuff. But I had, my heart in my throat, because I was like, all these people are going to come and it's going to be raining and they're going to be so upset and they're going to be mad and they're going to hate the conference. The first one ever. And funnily enough, it actually created a really special atmosphere. While it was raining, like tropical rain, like it never rains in Berlin. I'd never seen that in all my years in Berlin. It created these things where people are just like all cramping up in the little stage under the roof and just listening to the talks. It made it quite special. So that's one thing that I always remember. And really, it was kind of the worst thing that could happen in that regard. And it happened. And then after that, it's like, all right, after this, what else? what else can go wrong? That was definitely one bad one. On kind of on a maybe funnier anecdote is like after the first one ended, me and Sergi, who's also, I mean, I didn't count him on the team, but he also flies in. He's a friend who used to live in Berlin, now he lives in Barcelona, flew in and helped out on both editions. Great guy. And we were having dinner in Barcelona one day, and he was like, "What are you gonna do for the next edition?" I'm like, "I don't know. I'll just bring someone like Brad Frost." And we were like, like, how is that gonna work? It's like, where is that gonna be like? And I mean, I sent him an email, and he said yes, and
and you have Brad Frost, yes.
So that was pretty crazy. That was a moment where you're like, okay, but so all I need to do is ask, like, what is that about? So definitely a great lesson in that. I think those are definitely two defining anecdotes.
So let's imagine that we want to organize a design event in a smaller city, let's say Tallinn, Estonia. Where should we start? Or where would you start, Damian?
As I said, everything needs to start in an Excel sheet. This is, I mean, you can't forget that this has to work out as a business. And while there might be, obviously, like year one, we had losses, we did not make a profit, but you have to know that, and you have to make your kind of your business plan and accordingly to that. So I think you need to start with an Excel sheet of just being like, how much does the venue cost here? What can I get and what can't I get? And, what's the catering cost and whatever. What am I going to decide of how much I'm going to pay the speaker? So who can I reach with my budget, etc. And then once you have that number divided by the amount of people who can come, plus the profit that you want to make, etc. And this is where you start, because otherwise you can have greatest ideas, you can have someone amazing coming to speak, but it has to be a business that is viable.
Yeah.
Then after that, it's just more about, I guess, a concept, and particularly, I think there's too many conferences and there's too many meetups and things like that. And what happens is like there's a big kind of generic bubble of events. People, if you don't propose something that's interesting and different enough, people will just skip it. So that's why we go with something that's as bold as just being like senior and above only, and like to happening in this way, like it's multiple stages and whatever. So it's not for everyone, and we know that. And I think the better you define kind of who's your customer and who's the person who's going to enjoy this the most, the more you can tailor to that. And you have to be okay with just like leaving everyone else out, because otherwise you just end up with this generic thing that no one really likes, or it serves no one, right? And then after that, I think it's just getting your network right, and getting the right people to help, and having a concept in general of what that's going to be like. Then that's pretty much it. Once you have that, the rest just like rolls in.
Damon, how do you balance topics? Because you can find yourself in a situation when you have, for example, 3 topics about design systems.
Yeah.
How do you avoid that?
I think that ultimately the curation is a lot of what makes a conference different than others. There are conferences that are kind of very, on the very academic side, and they're, very much about that kind of like people doing research and stuff like that. There's conferences who are all about like big names and headliners and just throwing out, everything to the fire. And what we personally try to do is, I think we believe that we're a market-oriented conference. So we definitely feel like I want the people to come to the conference and leave with something that's graspable and usable for them, actionable in the next few months, right? And not just come and think that they just heard about it, like nice theory, or like designers saying how great design is, because that serves no one, right? So we always try to make a bit of a balance between like, okay, where's the market going? Where do you see it's going? And the trends, but not in the trends and just like what cool stuff is happening, but also what bad stuff is happening, right? Like this year with layoffs and stuff like that, there was a lot of concern and content around that. And obviously, because we have this very specific audience that is like seniors, especially transitioning into design leadership and stuff like that, we have it's easy to be like, okay, what are those people going through? So you go and ask them, and they're happy to tell you. And obviously with the meetups and with the network in general in Berlin and the rest of Europe, that becomes easy. So it's not like we're like digging underground to just try to see what's going on. We just try to serve that. Obviously, you cannot always find the right person to do the right thing. Particularly, we also obviously, we put a call for speakers out there last year. We'll do the same this year. We had maybe like 8 spots and we had like 130 people applying, and it's like so hard to just go through everything. You want to make sure that you give everyone the right time. There's also obviously the part about having a diverse lineup of speakers, not having the same people over and over again, people who are featured all the time everywhere, or just the same prototypical conference speaker. You want to have something that represents everything, and especially for us, because we're a conference in Europe, we want to have a European representation that's really, to us, while we have like Brad and Jamie and stuff who are American, like to us, it was not about like representing the American market because very few people there would benefit out of it. It was really more about representing the European market.
You told that there were a lot of people, like hundreds, applied for the conference. Can you give some tips for those people, how to apply better, what to talk about, what not to talk about?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we, in our call for speakers, we really put a lot of time explaining what we're looking for. While there is like a possibility of submitting whatever you want, we do have certain topics that we're interested in. We do have, a whole description of how everything works. And to us, what's really important is that it comes from a personal side, like what you're actually going to speak about. And that's not always necessarily based on your career, but some people were like, oh, AI is trending, so I'm going to talk about AI. And then it's like, okay, what's your experience with that? Nothing really. I'm very well informed. And so we want to have people that are really hands-on and stuff. So the best thing that someone wants to do when they want to apply is to really think of like, what have I done, or what I do, or how do I think that's very different, and that can really only I can. We had like one of the fields of like the call for speakers. I was like, why would you be the person to speak about that, right? Like, why should we pick you instead of someone else? And obviously, from the 130 people who applied, there were like 20 things that had nothing to do with what we asked, so that you direct to trash. But then from the rest, you do have some people that were just generically giving you talks that that you find already online, that you like explanations about methods or systems, or like how they do their things in companies, which are not really like any different than how other companies do it. So there was a lot of generic approaches, and that's kind of easy to detect. So my also people submitting like 5 different talks, and it's like, okay, if you can do all of them, like what's the difference between one or the other? So it really has to be about like what is the one thing that you can really serve, and if you know what the conference is about and what we're focusing on, like how does that fit with that? And a great way to do that is like look into like conferences programs from previous years and see which kind of talks they chose, and understand a little bit why would they be that they curated this and this and this after that, and try to kind of reverse engineer that.
Don't be too generic. Yeah,
definitely. No,
I might be biased, but please, like, I don't want to hear another talk about how AI is overtaking the design industry. I'm so tired of that.
Yeah.
I listened to so many of those talks. So let's say we're doing well and we're designing a good event in a smaller city. Perhaps it was difficult to get us off the ground, but now we have like a sizable community, and maybe we want to take things further, or maybe it's got a good momentum. What are some bad ideas that you would try to advise us against doing, let's say if we're planning for such events, like not having free beer, or not having too many people, spreading too thin, like you said, so any other advice that you would have for us not to do?
I would say anything that kills the sort of the magic that you're supposed to create within that. So that could be, for example, to me, it's like events that are too large, right? When something is too large or too crowded, most of the people are introverts. They feel out of place. They want to leave. Obviously, when we talk about like comfort, food, all that kind of stuff, it's better that most of the people that come paid from the companies. So sometimes you're kind of like, should this be like 10 euros more? It's maybe too much to ask for that. And then you're like, no, actually put it in, because no one's going to care but they are going to care when they have to like go and queue and pay and all this kind of things that kind of kill the vibe as well. For us, that's something very important, that we don't want money in the conference running around. Like, we don't care about that. And I mean, there's so many things that can, obviously, like generic topics, or just like opening up some people want to like grasp more and just be like, hey, this is a design conference or product conference, so everything goes, and it's like so hard to like really navigate that. I think it's having, obviously, communicate well, have the program and the stuff like at hand, let people navigate the venue and the place by themselves, because otherwise it's really confusing. And yeah, and just obviously have people around that are paying attention to what's going on and can fix whichever problems are happening.
Got it. I remember some events with terrible toilets and really bad coffee. I think those are the most memorable for the wrong reasons.
Yes.
Yeah. So coffee is really important. Clean toilets, clean bathrooms. Those are really important as well.
Yeah, I remember one where talks were back to back, and there were just a few breaks.
Yeah.
And I was just brain fried.
Absolutely.
By 3 talks happening one by one, and by the 4th talk, I weren't able to perceive any information or like to remember anything.
And this is one of the main things that people, especially like some older conferences, did not understand yet about like what happened like pre-COVID, after COVID. It's a completely different world. People don't go to conferences to just sit down and watch the talks. I mean, obviously that's something that drives you there or that you might want to be interested in, but the key element of a conference is the time that you have with your peers. So like have the opportunities, not only the breaks, right? Like that's obvious that you need the time to like connect with each other, but don't punish people if they're actually missing something, or like, don't make it so that they have to be somewhere, or don't try to like guide everyone to be like 5:00 everyone here, because this just makes it very stressful, right? And you don't know how you're going to feel at that time. We're like, hey, we record everything, like you're not going to miss out on like anything, like you're going to have it in like a week, so if you can wait, then it's fine. So relax and just go do whatever you want, come see whatever you want to see. Obviously there are people who are like, oh, but I was missing this, or I wanted to watch everything, and was like, well, that's not the conference for you then.
Yeah. If I will want to sit and listen for 2 hours or 3 hours, I will call my grandmother.
Yeah,
just like sit and listen to stories like 3 hours on a go, like of all the stories about the USSR. So about the future a bit, what can we expect from the next edition of the Hatch conference? Any ideas, any spoilers you have for us?
I think one of the most interesting things that we're doing is, like, last year we had a 3-day conference, and the second day was a leadership ateliers day, which was a day just fully on workshops and masterclasses for people who are transitioning from senior designers into design leadership, or were early design leaders. We're actually taking this second day and we're doing it as a standalone event of 2 days, happening in Berlin and in Barcelona. And they're going to happen the first half of the year, so around the beginning of May. So this is definitely like, it's a completely different thing, because it's not a conference, right? It's purely like workshops, masterclasses. It's much, much smaller, 60 to 80 people. It's also a different price because it is much more premium of an experience. But I think it will definitely be something that people are very, very excited about. The second day was definitely the day where people were like, I've never had this type of experience, because a conference can be great, but it's a conference. So on that side, I'm really excited about where that is going. And if by the time you're listening to this, there are tickets on sale or anything, you can check out leadershipateliers.com. Regarding Hatch specifically, I think there's we want to change very little in terms of like what you can do there, but it's going to be slightly bigger. It's going to be, we had like 350. It's probably going to be like 450, but we're gonna open like a whole bigger stage, which was the dome that we had last year, so it's just for day 2. And it's gonna be a little more like a festival in a way, because we're gonna have the outdoor area. We're gonna have a lot more going on, and you're gonna miss out on more stuff.
Nice.
But it's gonna be a lot more, the interactive side, and obviously we're gonna use the outdoor part. And the dates are in the 6th of September, I believe. So it's like very as well as
any rain protection.
We'll definitely have that, but yeah, definitely that's something that we need to see what's possible in the place, because they obviously have their limitations, but we at least want to make sure that people can go from one stage to the other without getting wet. Maybe we give umbrellas in the gift bags, you know.
Oh yeah, umbrella can be part of your swag. I love the swag, by the way. There were the pins and the tote bags, and it was something that that I'm proud to carry. Not like maybe some other events. This is cool. I attended this, and then if you spot somebody with this bag, hey, like there's a fellow designer. Someone in your tribe. So
yeah, this was one of the. I mean, we obsessed about all the details, and this is maybe what also makes the conference stand out. And something like the big gift bag was such a hard thing to think about, because on one side, one is like, hey, there's so many like tote bags and like crap that you get on a bag. It's, we have to be environmentally conscious. Like, what can we do? We want people to have something nice, but at the same time, it's like, does it make sense? So we really put a lot of effort to be like, hey, if we're going to put it in there, it has to be something that's really good to like either keep or that is very useful for that. So that's why we gave like, and obviously like a level of quality where you're like, we're not giving any like, everything was, the bag is organic fair trade. And then we had like all of the stuff was recyclable materials except for the pins, but obviously the pins are metal. So we want people to keep them and use them. So yeah, everything we try to make the best kind of like level on that. But it's one of the hardest things for people to agree on, because when we survey people and what would you like as a gift bag or whatever, it's like very different results, completely different results. So it's how to make a bet.
And how do you see the future of such events in the design industry evolving over the next few years, let's say?
I'd like to think that they will become as specific as we are, or even more, I would like to see the end of this giant generic events that really don't serve anyone, and just everything becoming a lot more specific, particularly for us, because when you start a conference and it starts getting big, people are telling you like, okay, like what's the next city? Are you like expanding to like New York or something like that? And it's like, no, it's not really where we're going, but we still want to integrate as many people as possible. And that's where we started these mixers that are happening all around Europe. It's like meetups on the day before the conference starts, and it's like free for everyone to attend. People then get a pass for the online conference and all this kind of stuff that can really grow the audience without actually having to like repeat or expand. We also made the decision to cap, the conference to what next year is going to be, and never grow it again, because we don't believe that larger events are enjoyable anymore. So at a certain point, we'll have to, if the demand is as high as it is right now, we'll have to think of like what's a fair way to like give tickets or make people sign up for it.
So it's not gonna be like a Coldplay concert.
Hopefully not. No, never. I don't want that, and it's just so impersonal. And also, we have these things like we have roundtables or like formats that are meant to be like 15, 20 people, right? So like you can't have 1,000 people, because then you need like 17 different rooms, and there's no venue that can hold that without being like a hotel or something like this, right? We don't want to make it in a hotel. So it's it's a conscious decision to just stay small. And hey, if we're if there's enough demand, maybe someone finds another one. Like, that's fine too.
Damian, thank you so much for your time and for coming to our podcast and talking with us. It was a pleasure listening all these stories about Hatch and about how to organize an event and all your tips and tricks.
Thank you so much for your time, Damian.
Thank you, guys. It was full of fun.
All right. See you at Hatch.
See ya.
Thank you for listening this episode. If you like what you heard, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss a new episode. And share this podcast with your friends and colleagues. That will help us to grow. Stay tuned for more design talks.